Hi. Hi. I'm Jonathan Skinner. I'm streaming to you from the Midlands in Warwickshire and central England. This is my outdoor office, and I'm going to read to you from James Joyce's Ulysses in celebration of Bloomsday. Cheers. I guess my connection with this book is institutional in the sense that I participated in a preceptorial seminar in my junior year of college, led by Stuart Boyd, Stu, as we used to call him. And it was a seminar on Ulysses, which we read and enjoyed. And my friend C.J. Dallett led an annual Bloomsday reading in those years, during which we read Ulysses and drank whiskey. And CJ passed away about 3 years ago. So this reading's for CJ. And I'm going to read from the Ithaca section, which is the penultimate section of the novel. And I guess it's the catechism. It's in the form of a catechism. A lot of Latin language. It's Leopold Bloom, bringing Stephen Dedalus back to his house for a cup of tea. And then they go outside and look at the stars and have a pee. That's the action. But there's a lot of language. And I guess that's what I liked about it was, it's one of those examples of how you can make poetry out of just about anything. And just another language game in the marvelous compendium of language games that is Ulysses. And there's a lot of science, and I love combining science and poetry, science and literature. So I think that's it. I think I'll just go ahead and read. I'm going to read from two sections, and I'm using the 1922 edition, edited by Jerry Johnson. There's probably some typos in here. Anyways, so I'll begin with page 624 in this edition. Thanks for joining me. What in water did Bloom, water lover, drawer of water, water carrier, returning to the range, admire? Its universality, its democratic equality and constancy to its nature in seeking its own level, its vastness in the ocean of Mercator's projection, its unplumbed profundity in the sun-dammed trench of the Pacific exceeding 8,000 fathoms, the restlessness of its waves and surface particles visiting in turn all points of its seaboard, the independence of its units, the variability of states of sea, its hydrostatic quiescence and calm, its hydrokinetic turgidity in neap and spring tides, its subsidence after devastation, its sterility in the circumpolar ice caps, Arctic and Antarctic, its climactic and commercial significance, its preponderance of 3-1 over the dry land of the globe, its indisputable hegemony extending in square leagues over all the region below the subequatorial Tropic of Capricorn, the multi-secular stability of its primeval basin, its luteus fulvus bed, its capacity to dissolve and hold in solution all soluble substances, including millions of tons of the most precious metals, its slow erosions of peninsulas and downward-tending promontories, its alluvial deposits, its weight and volume and density, its imperturbability in lagoons and highland tarns, its gradation of colors in the torrid and temperate and frigid zones, its vehicular ramifications in continental, lake-contained streams and confluent ocean-flowing rivers with their tributaries and transoceanic currents, Gulf Stream, north and south equatorial courses, its violence and sea quakes, waterspouts, artesian wells, eruptions, torrents, eddies, freshets, spates, ground swells, watersheds, water partings, geysers, cataracts, whirlpools, maelstroms, inundations, delugers, cloudbursts. Its vast circumterrestrial ahorizontal curve, its secrecy in springs and latent humidity revealed by rhabdomantic or hygrometric instruments and exemplified by the hole in the wall at Ashtown Gate, saturation of air, distillation of dew, the simplicity of its composition, 2 constituent parts of hydrogen with 1 constituent part of oxygen, its healing virtues, its buoyancy in the waters of the Dead Sea, its persevering penetrativeness in runnels, gullies, inadequate dams, leaks on shipboard, its properties for cleansing, quenching thirst and fire, nourishing vegetation, its infallibility as paradigm and paragon, its metamorphoses as vapor, mist, cloud, rain, sleet, snow, hail, its strength in rigid hydrants, its variety of forms in lochs and bays and gulfs and bights and guts and lagoons and atolls and archipelagos and sounds and fjords and minches and tidal estuaries and arms of sea, its solidity in glaciers, icebergs, ice floes, its docility in working hydraulic mill wheels, turbines, dynamos, electric power stations, bleach works, tanneries, scutch mills, its utility in canals, rivers, if navigable, floating and graving docks, its potentiality derivable from harnessed tides or watercourses falling from level to level, its submarine fauna and flora, anacoustic, photophobe, numerically, if not literally, the inhabitants of the globe, its ubiquity is constituting 90% of the human body, the noxiousness of its effluvia and lacustrine marshes, pestilential fens, faded flower water, stagnant pools in the waning moon. Now moving on to they've had their cup of tea and they're going outside. In what order of precedence, with what attendant ceremony was the exodus from the house of bondage to the wilderness of inhabitation effected? Lighted candle and stick borne by Bloom. Diaconal hat on ash plant borne by Stephen. With what intonation secreto of what commemorative psalm? The 113th modus peregrinus in exitu Israel de Egypto, domus Jacob de populo barbaro. What did each do at the door of egress? Bloom set the candlestick on the floor. Stephen put the hat on his head. For what creature was the door of egress a door of ingress? For a cat. What spectacle confronted them when they, first the host, then the guest, emerged silently, doubly dark, from obscurity by a passage from the rear of the house into the penumbra of the garden? The heaven tree of stars hung with humid night blue fruit. With what meditations did Bloom accompany his demonstration to his companion of various constellations? Meditations of evolution, increasingly vaster, of the moon invisible and incipient lunation, approaching perigee, of the infinite, lactigenous, scintillating, uncondensed Milky Way, discernible by daylight by an observer placed at the lower end of a cylindrical vertical shaft 5,000 feet deep, sunk from the surface towards the center of the Earth. Sirius, Alpha and Canis Major, 10 light years, 57 billion miles, distant and in volume 900 times the dimension of our planet, of Arcturus, of the procession of equinoxes, of Orion with belt and sextuple sun, theta and nebula in which 100 of our solar systems could be contained, of moribund and of nascent new stars such as Nova in 1901, of our system plunging towards the constellation of Hercules, of the parallax or parallactic drift of social fixed stars, in reality ever moving from immeasurably remote eons to infinitely remote futures in comparison with which the years, 70 of allotted human life formed a parenthesis of infinitesimal brevity. Were there obverse meditations of involution increasingly less fast? Of the eons of geological periods recorded in the stratifications of the Earth, of the myriad minute entomological organic existences concealed in cavities of the Earth, beneath removable stones, in hives and mounds of microbes, germs, bacteria, bacilli, spermatozoa, of the incalculable trillions of billions of millions of imperceptible molecules contained by cohesion of molecular affinity in a single pinhead, of the universe of human serum constellated with red and white bodies, themselves universes of void space constellated with other bodies, each in continuity, its universe of divisible component bodies, of which each was again divisible in divisions of redivisible component bodies, dividends and divisors ever diminishing without actual division until, if the progress were carried far enough, not nowhere was never reached. Skipping ahead just a little bit, a couple of pages, page 654 now. What special affinities appeared to him to exist between the moon and woman? Her antiquity in preceding and surviving successive Tellurian generations, her nocturnal predominance, her satellitic dependence, her luminary reflection, her constancy under all her phases, rising and setting by her appointed times, waxing and waning, the forced invariability of her aspect, her indeterminate response to inaffirmative interrogation, her potency over effluent and refluent waters, her power to enamor, to mortify, to invest with beauty, to render insane, to incite to and aid delinquency, the tranquil inscrutability of her visage, the terribility of her isolated, dominant, implacable, resplendent propinquity, her omens of tempest and of calm, the stimulation of her light, her motion and her presence, the admonition of her craters, her arid seas, her silence, her splendor when visible, her attraction when invisible. What visible, luminous sign attracted Bloom's, who attracted Stephen's gaze? In the second story rear of his, Bloom's, house, the light of a paraffin oil lamp with oblique shade projected on a screen of roller blind, supplied by Frank O'Hara, window blind, curtain pole, and revolving shutter manufacturer, 16 Anjou Street. How did he elucidate the mystery of an invisible person, his wife Marion Molly Bloom, denoted by a visible splendid sign, a lamp, with indirect and direct verbal allusions or affirmations, with subdued affection and admiration, with description, with impediment, with suggestion? Both then were silent? Silent, each contemplating the other in both mirrors of the reciprocal flesh of their his, not his, fellow faces. Were they indefinitely inactive? At Stephen's suggestion, at Bloom's instigation both, first Stephen, then Bloom, in penumbra urinated, their sides contiguous, their organs of micturition reciprocally rendered invisible by manual circumposition, their gazes, first Bloom's, then Stephen's, elevated to the projected luminous and semi-luminous shadow. Similarly, the trajectories of their first sequent, then simultaneous urinations were dissimilar, Bloom's longer, less errant, in the incomplete form of the bifurcated penultimate alphabetical letter who, in his ultimate year at high school, 1880, had been capable of attaining the point of greatest altitude against the whole concurrent strength of the institution, 210 scholars. Stephen's higher, more sibilant, who in the ultimate hours of the previous day had augmented by diuretic consumption and insistent vesical pressure. What different problems presented themselves to each concerning the invisible, audible, collateral organ of the other? To Bloom, the problems of irritability, tumescence, rigidity, reactivity, dimension, sanitariness, porosity. To Stephen, the problem of the sacerdotal integrity of Jesus circumcised, 1st January, holiday of obligation, to hear Mass and abstain from unnecessary servile work, and the problem as to whether the divine prepuce, the carnal bridal ring of the Holy Roman Catholic Apostolic Church, conserved in Calcutta, were deserving of simple hyperduly or of the 4th degree of latria accorded to the abscission of such divine excrescences as hair and toenails. What celestial sign was by both simultaneously observed? A star precipitated with great apparent velocity across the firmament from Vega in the Lyre above the zenith, beyond the star group of the Tress of Berenice, towards the zodiacal sign of Leo. How did the centripetal remainer afford egress to the centrifugal departer? by inserting the barrel of an originated male key in the hole of an unstable female lock, obtaining a purchase on the bow of the key, and turning its wards from right to left, withdrawing a bolt from its staple, pulling inward spasmodically an obsolescent unhinged door, and revealing an aperture for free egress and free ingress. How did they take their leave, one of the other, in separation? Standing perpendicular at the same door and on different sides of its base, the lines of the valedictory arms meeting at any point and forming any angle less than the sum of two right angles. What sound accompanied the union of their tangent, the disunion of their respectively centrifugal and centripetal hands? The sound of the peal of the hour of the night by the chime of the bells in the church of St. George. What echoes of that sound were by both and each heard? By Stephen, Liliata rutilantium turma circundet, jubilantium te virginum chorus excipiat. By Bloom, hey ho, hey ho, hey ho, hey ho. So cheers, CJ, James, Stu, and also the rare books, collection at University of Buffalo. That's my other institutional link. Having spent many, many hours in there researching as a grad student and occasionally getting to wander over to whatever scholar was in residence working on Joyce and look at some of the manuscript pages for Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake with the different colored pencil annotations. So, grateful that book exists, and thanks for the invitation to read this, and happy Bloomsday.